Of George Douvris.
Testing 1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Joyce, for the introduction. Like the book says, I've crossed a lot of karma zones in my life, meaning different lifestyles, different places, different times, and always with a spirit of love, I think. And I'm glad to be here in a very nice environment.
A little louder, George.
My wife and I and family lived in Pahoa for the last few years. Before that, it was Maui and a lot of other places around the world. But now we're here now, and I'm going to read a few of the passages of places and times that I've been in. The first one, well, I'll start off with early youth. Being in a strict Greek Orthodox family, we had a lot of traditions, and this covers one of them. Another old world tradition was when the priest would come around several times a year to bless each home and have an individual visit with each family. Sometime between my 16th and 17th birthday, there was an even more personal visit to our house, as my parents believed that contemporary pop culture of the time was bringing evil influences to me. Just as parents of their generation were not explaining their customs to their children, my parents had no clue and much to fear about what they perceived was bringing dark possession on their son. I had already stopped being chubby, was growing my hair long, had a Jimi Hendrix poster on the wall of equal size as the church icons, and was playing records louder every week. The priest was called to make a special blessing on me and to exorcise these demons that now were influencing my path of individuation. Besides the prayers, I had to read in the priest's holy book and the holy water that was being sprinkled on my head for casting these vile spirits out of me. The priest asked me to take one more step towards my spiritual cleansing. During the Good Friday night procession, the priest carries the large cross that represents Jesus' crucifixion around the church and a county park. This year, the priest asked me to do the cross carrying instead so as to confirm my clearing. Not only did I carry the cross, but at one point I placed the cross over my shoulders, and with my long hair posturing, many of the older ladies came up to me in tears to tell me that they actually saw Jesus when they looked at me. Now it's more like saying that, but anyway. Process done, I felt much like Charlton Heston, convincing audiences that he was Moses. But instead of blowing away animals like Chuck would do for the NRA, I went back to growing my hair longer and playing my rock and roll even louder. At this point, my parents started questioning the success of my exorcism. A couple of years later, or earlier, I'm not sure, but it's still family life. Drive-in theatrics, 1959. My favorite types of movies to watch in my early childhood were science fiction, monster, and horror, all in that order. The Wake Theater showed many of these types, but as my taste for the more provocative grew, I knew that it was time to start going to the drive-in theaters as often as they would be playing the kind of movies I liked on special all-night weekends presentations. Likewise, I would feel happy being at a social gathering of kids with similar interests as mine. Eventually, when I was old enough to drive, I would often go to drive-in shows and deal with trying to find a set of speakers that worked, as well as not having some loudmouths next to me blanketing out the screen when they would turn on their headlights. But when I was about 10 years old and my parents did not have a car to go to the drive-in theater for one particular Saturday night horror movies till dawn extravaganza, I managed to talk them into taking me the bit out of town Forest Theater in a taxi. The concession stand was open early, and not too many people seemed to have noticed our bizarre presence of watching movies at a drive-in theater by just sitting there where the cars would normally park and listening with one of the speakers as others would do, but without the vehicle. My parents eventually became confused and then upset as to why we were even there, and even though I tried hard to convince them to stay and that it was important for us to socialize as being good Americans by going to the drive-in movie theater so I could watch the all-night horror movies. Sometime after midnight, after they couldn't find any taxi companies open, they managed to call their friend Tony, who came and picked us up and took us back home. I learned that from then on, my parents wouldn't always believe my justifications, and that horror movies led the way to my latter interest in out-of-the-ordinary alternative states of consciousness and metaphysics. I got another churchy kind of story, but this one it has to do with Catholic school. My parents decided that I should go to a Catholic school because that was closer to Greek Orthodox and public school where all the hoodlums were. This was another 1959 story. Although I survived condemnation to eternal punishment in the devil's hell pit for my redistribution of shoplifted wealth, well, that was some kid that was thinking that Jesus told him to go rob from the church plate and spread the money out to his friends. So I went and bought some comics books with my shit. Anyway, I soon was to learn that the Almighty himself is also a fickle partner in the world of church business. Having a bright self-image of myself to the nuns, with my consistent correct parroting of dogmatic catechism, I was expecting some sort of accolades when my 5th grade teacher asked me to step in front of the room at the start of religion class. My smile quickly was swallowed by shock as the show and tell went from her initial preface of what a good boy I was from my perfect recitals of the party line indoctrination to the unquestionable fact that I would go to hell because my parents had chosen not baptizing me in the holy waters of the Roman Catholic Church. What a difference a drop of water makes, not only in the horrible sentencing I was inflicted, but also in my tear-drenched eyes, seeing my friends of many years now looking at me as if I had grown horns, tail, and drippy zips. Thus, as soon as I went home, I explained to my parents why they had to do a quick submersion of my body and soul in new baptismal crucibles if they cared for me. My dad, who always had a polite attitude to the nuns, took a moment for his emotional fires to fume before racing back to my school and exploding a broken English harangue to the Mother Superior that was spiced with the sort of 4-letter words that were defined as bringing bonus miles venial sin mileage. I guess there's some Catholics out here. I went into a hiding posture of humiliation, quite certain that now an even more horrid damnation awaited for me because of my dad's escapade. However, I was soon to learn that even God can be a free agent in times of trouble. Not wishing to lose a hefty non-Catholic tuition from the coffers of Sacred Heart Cathedral School, it seemed that my father's visit had influenced the nuns to not only not mention my soul loss again, but also be treating me nice as if nothing had happened. Even more significant was that my friends played with me once again. Thus, a lesson was taught on how God can have a change of heart when money is involved, and that people can be influenced into turning friends into enemies and back into friends again when the authority decrees. Machiavelli surely must have had a voice in the Vatican political views of human resourcing in the name of even the holiest. All right, one more ethnic one. My parents decided it would be a good gesture to bring my grandmother from Greece to live with us in North Carolina. Now, my grandmother was living in a small little village, had no clue about life in modern America, but this little paragraph has a little glimpse of that. At times when both my parents went to work, I would be left with Yaya Spiridula at home. Coming from a rural traditional village in Greece, she was quite confused by modern appliances and habits that we took for normal. Television was the usual attention pacifier of the day, which for me meant lots of Tarzan, Superman, and Popeye episodes. Not sensitive to what it would mean for my grandmother, I left her alone with the TV for a while so I could do something else. But it wasn't long before I ran back after hearing her screaming for help. Coming back into the room, I found her on her knees in a prayer pose, exclaiming that there was a devil in the TV talking to her in a weird language. Perhaps she was more intuitive about commercials and salesmen than we realized. All right, I'm going to jump to high school, and this was North Carolina. Racism was pretty heavy at the time, and it has to do with sports. Besides playing in random pickup games, in 12th grade, I signed up to play in an intramural basketball high school league. The year was 1969, so there was a lot more creative approach in my head as to team and game definition. As most schools in the Deep South, segregation was a big issue, and even with the civil rights laws, school institutions still found ways to exclude black American kids from white kids' domains. Thus, even with the many talented black athletes in our school, Broughton High School's official basketball team was all white. Following the lead of creative street political satire such as what the pranksters were doing in California and the yippies in New York, I organized a team of hippies and black friends called the Nirvana Midnight Express. Our plan was to lose as many games as we could during the regular season while having fun doing it. Focusing on the ridiculousness of aggressive competition, which is one of the roots of war, our team was generous enough to even make shots go into our opponents' baskets so they would win. We had our individual moments of scoring and playing well, but the point of winning was reversed. The second step of the master plan was to change our goal of losing and instead play to win in the end of the season tournament. By this time, the hippies and I on our team realized that our black teammates were far better players, so we mostly sat on the bench and cheered them on to victory after victory. When the score was quite clearly showing we would win, the rest of us would come into the game for a few minutes of athletic fun as well. Winning the tournament also meant that we would have the right to have an exhibition game with the official Broughton High School basketball team, and thus force the school to pay attention to their apartheid policy on athletics. There was a bureaucratic attempt for the Broughton team to get out of playing our team, but as their commitment was at this point irreversible, the game had to go on. Besides the regular fan interest, there was an even wider attendance from the school hippies and black student body as well as from the white racists who wanted to see the nigger team wiped out. Blonde, clean, and arrogant, the Broughton High team eyed us with wide-faced smiles of sure victory. We eyed them back with our own wide, smiling, stoned-out eyes. And what a grand day it was. Our team dunked, blocked shots, and zipped passes all over the helpless and dejected-looking white-faced prima donnas. They even had their Barbie cheerleaders there who soon into the game stared in disbelief and cried as we proved that the school's best athletes were not the ones with the official team outfits on. It was quite fulfilling to know that the game set a new precedent, not only Broughton High School's athletic program, but also to the other state schools as well. The school newspaper had no mention of the exhibition game we played, but the following year I was delighted to see that Broughton High School was filling their school teams with many outstanding black players. The times they were a-changing.
Wow.